Hi Josh, I'm here to give you some feedback on your essay outline assignment. You've seen the mark right now, so you know that your mark at the moment is 16.25 out of 25 for this assignment. You've started with a good job, and so the feedback here I want to give you is hopefully going to help you improve the mark, so that way the final essay assignment will be, a B plus or more for this essay. Let's start with the introduction. Your introduction, I gave you 1 out of 3 at the beginning because I felt like I needed you to choose one of the introduction methods. So we've looked at this before either through the PowerPoint notes or the readings that we've done in class about the different types of introduction methods. I want you to choose one of these methods and use them as a way to introduce the reader to your topic. So that could be from telling a story, to shifting to the opposite, talk about what it's like to be healthy and, fulfilled by food, and then transition to the opposite by introducing hunger, or going from broad to narrow, define hunger to us, and then transition to saying that your essay will focus on these 3 effects. So I want you to spend a little bit more time on the introduction. And then the thesis statement, I scored you 1.5 out of 2. I think you should rephrase your thesis statement to include part of this sentence. So your thesis should say, hunger has 3 major effects on Canadians: famine, food insecurity, and mental health. If you do that, this will be a very strong, clear, detailed thesis, which can then be accompanied by an introduction paragraph that helps lead the reader to this major thesis. Now, focusing on each of your supporting paragraphs, your first supporting paragraph I scored 3.5 out of 5. I liked that you defined famine, and then you explained in history some examples of famine in the past, but then you wrote that in Canada there is no famine. And I think you should do a little bit more research online to see about examples of famine in Canada, because there are, if not direct examples, indirect examples related to famine. So I'm just going to show you over here. I googled famine in Canada just to show you generally. There's some articles here that talk about how Canada supports famine. So Canada might not be seeing famine, but supports famine in supports solving famine in other countries. And then it also talks about in history. So for example, the Irish potato famine. This is just one example of the way famine has affected Canada in the past. And so I do suggest that, you look at some of these sources because they might be helpful to you to help explain how is famine connected to Canada. Here where you talk about why this effect of famine is important, this is a good section, but what I made a note of is knowing what your sources are. Look at the example that I gave on the last day of class, where the person put in-text citations to tell me where they got their information from. And I want you to model that example when you tell me where you got this information from about the damage famine can do. The second major effect, I scored 3.75 out of 5. I found this paragraph to be a lot stronger. Again, I want to know where your sources are. So I know that you did not create statistic 12.5%. You read it somewhere. I want to know where you read it from. You show me that by putting an in-text citation. I think here at the end of your paragraph, the reason why I didn't score this higher is because you define food insecurity, which is good. You give me some statistics, and then you tell me that residents can advocate food from the food bank. So I want you to explain that a little bit more. So are you trying to say that residents can help address food insecurity by supporting a food bank? Or are you trying to say that residents can try to prevent food insecurity in their lives by going to a food bank? Tell me what you mean and then provide me an example. For example, in Toronto, there is this food bank that people go to do, this action. Your last supporting paragraph, I scored 3.5 out of 5. Again, you did well by defining mental illness again for me. But what I want you to do before you start telling me the effects is to explain to me how hunger creates mental illness. So I want you to think about this like a process paragraph. So you've already defined hunger, and then in this paragraph you define mental illness, but I want you to explain to me step by step, how does hunger lead to mental health problems or mental illness? That way, at this point in the paragraph, when you start talking about the effects, it makes so much more sense because you explained the process to me. You talk about here that it's concerning because it will affect Canadians' career. Explain what you mean. Tell me how. And then you say here it'll affect them in their daily life like school and work. Be specific, again, with your examples. Your conclusion, I scored 3 out of 5. I see that you repeated your thesis, which is good, but I do think that you can add more to this conclusion. This sentence is good, but what I want to see you do in the conclusion is leave the reader with something to think about. This can be either telling us what your opinion is about this topic after everything you've written, or telling the reader, next time you think about this topic, think about this issue, or think about this fact, or something that will just leave the reader with something to think about. So your conclusion should at least be minimum 3 or 4 sentences. And this isn't part of the final mark for this outline, but I want you to make sure that you put all of these sources in a reference list, because that will be a part of your mark on the final essay draft. Other than that, Josh, this is a good job done so far, and I look forward to seeing the final product.